Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
Cook Inlet Tug and Barge, a marine transportation company specializing in harbor services focusing on the Port of Anchorage and the major commercial participants in the Cook Inlet region, providing customers with marine services specifically tailored to their needs.
The National Weather Service.
Hello everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for Monday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy. On the watch warning chart here for the breakup, no watches or warnings out, and pretty extensive area of all open water now here on the Kuskokwim River from Nikolai on down toward Aniak. Still some open there upstream from Aniak and some leads downstream. On the Tanana River, the water flowing out, it's opened up about a 2-mile or so lead into the Yukon River with the open water flowing in. Some open here, or mostly open, all the way up, and then farther upstream gets to some open areas, and then southern Susitna Valley is or southern Susitna River is all open now. On yesterday's satellite imagery, we had one system here pushing in toward the Queen Charlotte's, and that spread some clouds up over the southern southeast coast, but beautiful day over the northern areas back into the eastern interior. This is the system that brought all the rain to Bristol Bay in the southwest interior yesterday, and still kicking off some showers over that way today, this afternoon, but nothing to the extent that they saw yesterday there. Pretty nice here back up over the northwest, and then out here to the west, the system that brought the gale force winds of the central Aleutians yesterday, and then this front in the rain pushing eastward in toward the Fox Islands there and into the Alaska Peninsula today. That brought over half an inch of rain to Unalaska in the last 24 hours, ending at 4 o'clock this afternoon. Falls Pass had about a 1/10 of an inch of rain. Only 1/100th up there at St. Paul. Rain started this afternoon, light rain, but easterly winds gusting up to 40 miles an hour at St. George, and then just a lot of showers and clouds out here back to the west over the Aleutian chain. Then we had some moisture here slipping in from the west, a westerly flow, and snow falling back over the western North Slope and Arctic coastal areas. Not heavy, but produced about 1/100th of an inch water equivalent at Barrow, and about the same at Aptasuk. But nicer conditions off to the east there around Arctic Village. Look mostly sunny and mild here all through the central interior, all the way down to the North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound. Sunshine along all of the Gulf Coast here down into the Panhandle. Still picking up some clouds as this system here slides by to the south. That's still nudging some clouds up, but I didn't see any reports of any precipitation down that way. Seems to be all to the south or over to the east in Canada. And putting this in motion again, you can see the leftover moisture here, mostly cirrus over Cook Inlet, but showers still lingering over the northeast Bristol Bay area this afternoon and up into the southern Alaska range. Had some reports around Sparrowvon of some rain showers this afternoon, and to a lesser extent over the Killbuck Mountains and maybe the southern Kuskokwim mountains up here. Could be some isolated showers going on there, but back to the west, still have low pressure that's sliding southward here over the Aleutians, keeping it again generally cloudy with showers out in that area, with the heavier rain now slipping up toward the Alaska Peninsula here from the eastern Aleutians, getting a little more showery out toward Unalaska and Nikolsky. But this will be lifting northwards. Look for some more rain and gusty winds tonight there for the Pribilof Islands. And then as the front moves northward during the evening hours tonight, winds continue to gust probably up to around 40 miles an hour, but then begin to diminish, the whole front weakening And then the moisture, rain changing to showers there for Cold Bay, Falls Pass. Rain on the increase here. In fact, catching up some of that leftover moisture over northeast Bristol Bay. So there's a chance of some precipitation, probably showers ending later this evening and then picking up chances again toward morning. Kodiak Island, most of the rainfall will be there on the south and west side of the island. Probably won't get to the east side until sometime tomorrow. Otherwise, pretty fair here over the interior with continued light wind conditions. That area of moisture slips down into the central Brooks Range area and into the eastern central North Slope and Arctic coastal areas tonight with that disturbance. And just an isolated shower over the Alaska Range, otherwise mostly fair. And again, light winds here through the eastern interior, Copper River Basin, and into the Panhandle. Just some lingering clouds down to the south, otherwise fair conditions with winds still a little brisk in areas, channeled areas. Juneau had northeast winds gusting to 30 miles an hour earlier today, but those have come down considerably. Still looking at the northeast, maybe 10 to 20 through the channeled areas of the passes there. That'll keep it dry and clear. Again, all the way down in toward Dixon Entrance, and for tomorrow, not much change down that way. Another mostly sunny day, light variable winds, the entire stretch of the coastline there up to the North Gulf Coast. A little bit of a southwest breeze into Prince William Sound. Same thing for Cook Inlet there, but this weakening front will bring a chance of rain, light rain, fog or drizzle to Kodiak Island. Areas of light rain up across Bristol Bay and along the southwest coast out to Nunivak Island and onto the west, but that'll lift north, rain changing to a few scattered showers for the Pribilofs, and then that low still south of central Aleutians. Pretty large circulation there, so that'll bring showers into the Alaska Peninsula, eastern Aleutians, and scattered to widely scattered conditions all the way out to Shemya and Attu. Otherwise, mostly sunny and mild conditions, temperatures rising into the lower 60s over the Kuskokwim Valley, and continued offshore breezes there, keeping the clouds and fog that'll burn off in the morning hours and extend, clear skies should extend a fair distance offshore, possibly all the way to St. Lawrence Island, like it did down along the southwest coast today. But tomorrow, again, the rain with that and the clouds pushing up with that weakening front, and then that system dropping into the eastern interior. That'll kick off some showers over the White Mountains, up toward upper Yukon Valley, over to Eagle, down toward Northway, and along the Alaska Range, eastern and central Alaska Range. Chance of some isolated to scattered showers, especially in the afternoon hours tomorrow. But again, just another beautiful day here along the southeast coast and through south central Alaska, even the Copper River Basin, Prince William Sound, and the North Gulf Coast. And for Wednesday, not much change. Another repeat, no change down here over southern Alaska. Risk of an isolated shower over Denali Park, and then less in the way of showers now up over the White Mountain areas. But that's, if they occur, that's about the place they'll be, is the mountains north and maybe east of Fairbanks there, north and northeast. And then some lingering snow showers up over the eastern North Slope, Brooks Range area, but dry back to the west. Still have that area, low clouds and fog lingering up there, or each day up along the Arctic coast and even back into the Chukchi Sea. But that offshore breezes, what forms overnight will burn off and dissipate quite rapidly during the morning hours. It should become VFR, at least along the coastline, marginal VFR out over the Bering Strait areas all the way down. And then just some, with this remnant frontal boundary here, just some isolated showers. Actually, some of this moisture slipping up from the southeast with this next low that develops southwest of Kodiak Island. So occasional light rain, fog, drizzle, Kodiak there. A little bit of an increase in the winds, especially across the Barren Islands through Shelikof Strait, probably reaching small craft advisories, but a little bit of moisture could slide up into southern Cook Inlet and maybe the Seldovia area over toward Iliamna, Pedro Bay and those areas, but just some isolated showers back to the west. Look for a dry day for the Alaska Peninsula with possible clearing down in that area. Some sunshine. And actually, the entire Aleutian chain looks pretty good with light winds and just dry conditions and maybe some breaks in the overcast all the way from Nikolsky on out to Shemya and Attu. Temperatures along the southeast coast, upper 50s to lower 60s at 61. These are all 4 o'clock readings, 61 at Sitka. Same thing over at Wrangell, and 61 up at Skagway today. 60 degrees in Yakutat with a lot of sunshine. Upper 50s, Prince William Sound, Valdez had 57, Palmer 57. And up at Gulkana there in the Copper River Basin, 57 degrees. Mid to upper 50s for the Tanana Valley with 55 at Northway. 59 over at Fairbanks and 52 west there at Tanana. Up to the north, mid-50s, Koyukuk Valley with 54 at Bettle. Same thing over at Fort Yukon. Near 40 in the Brooks Range with Anatuvik and Adigan at 39 degrees. Teens to lower 20s along the Arctic coast, but Kaktovik up to 27 again. 21 over at Cape Lisburne, 27 at Point Hope. 31 Kivalina, Kotzebue 34 degrees, but Deering just 28. And 37 along the south coast of the Seward Peninsula there. That's Golovin at 37, 35 at Nome, 37 at Unalakleet, and then 45 at Amonic, 37 at that's St. Mary, or no, that's Hooper Bay there, 36 at Macoriac, and 27 out at St. Lawrence Island. Otherwise in the interior, 60 degrees at McGrath. It'll be at least that warm, if not a couple degrees warmer tomorrow, with mid-50s down in toward the Bethel area where they had 53. 39 in St. Paul, 40 at St. George. Again, those gusty winds gusting 40 miles an hour there, with the rain a little bit heavier to the south, but temperatures in the upper 30s to lower 40s for the Aleutians, and mid to upper 40s for the Alaska Peninsula and Bristol Bay. For lows tonight, teens up over the Arctic coast and North Slope with teens and 20s through the Brooks Range. South of the mountains, though, lower to mid 30s over much of the interior. Copper River Basin, Northway Toke down into the Wrangell Mountains, of course, into the 20s there, but 35 to 40 here over south central Alaska, about the same out to the southwest, chillier along the coast, 35 to 40 here for Bristol Bay, but staying in the 40s for the Alaska Peninsula, and the southeast coast ranging from the mid 30s to the mid 40s down to the south. And for tomorrow's highs, 55 to 60 for the Panhandle, 55 to 60 here also for south central Alaska. But the Susitna Valley, Talkeetna, Wasilla, Palmer, all could rise into the lower 60s, as well as possibly Anchorage. Definitely big area 60s here over the west central interior with 62, the forecast high for McGrath, and 60-degree readings all the way down the lower Yukon River Valley there, and actually even out to the Delta where St. Mary's may reach 60 degrees tomorrow. Up to the north, chillier conditions, right around 20 for the Arctic coast, Kaktovik a little warmer again. And same thing for the North Slope with the Brooks Range area. Actually, that's 53 at Bettles, and then 40 at Arctic Village, Anatuvik with the elevation staying at 25. Flying weather, good VFR from the crest of the Brooks Range southward here across the interior into the North Gulf Coast. Good VFR across the Panhandle. Areas IFR up there over the Arctic coast throughout the day, and to a more extent up on the North Slope in the early morning hours, but that will break back to marginal VFR during the late morning into the early afternoon. IFR here north coast of the Seward Peninsula, but VFR down to the south due to that offshore wind flow. Maybe a little more socked in the morning here, but then during the morning hours I'll push back offshore, and then quite an extensive area of IFR here from St. George Island down across Unmak and Unalaska Islands, with some marginal VFR for the western Alaska Peninsula. Taking a look at passes for Anatuvik, VFR, but possible marginal conditions on the northern entrances, especially in the morning hours. That same forecast also for Adigan. Lake Clark and Merrill, VFR, either approach, rainy VFR, windy, good VFR tomorrow. Isabel and Mentasta, VFR, and probably again, possibly the next day. For Tanita, good VFR conditions tomorrow. Portage, both Tuesday and Wednesday, look for VFR. Chilkoot and White, good VFR for those passes as well. Freezing levels here up north of St. Lawrence Island late tonight and early tomorrow morning, right across the south coast of the Seward Peninsula and through the interior, then 4,000 feet here up north of the southeast coast, 6,000 feet back down still south of Kodiak Island, then kind of a cold pool out here over the south central Bering Sea and the central Aleutians. And at icing threats, just some leftover stuff possible along that weakening, dissipating frontal boundary, Kodiak Island, back up areas of across the northern Bristol Bay area, and then on out to the west, and some scattered mixed, occasionally mixed or rime icing here for the Alaska Peninsula, and just some widely scattered threats of that out over the Aleutians and southern Bering Sea. And then with that moisture slipping down from the northwest, could see some icing possibilities there, the mixed variety up over the eastern interior. Winds aloft shows that system kind of kink in the wind flow here dropping into the northeast interior there. Pretty good wind max behind that, about 65 knots coming over the top of this ridge. Otherwise, the low still parked out over the southern Bering Sea, actually south of the central Aleutians, and southwest jet at about 70 knots into Kodiak Island, turning west at 55 over high pressure over the Gulf of Alaska. And at 9,000 feet, pretty light winds, northwest 15 along and off the coast there of the Panhandle. Light variable winds all over the interior, just 5 to 10 knots, maybe west at 10 on the eastern Arctic coast. A little bit more of a breeze here. The western Capes, right over Cape Newenham there, southeast 25 knots, and then northeasterlies north of the Pribilofs now, 25 to 30 knots, otherwise 15 to 25 for the Alaska Peninsula on out to the Aleutians, but a little brisker out here over towards Chimionat too. 3,000 foot winds, much the same pattern, high pressure over the Northeast Pacific and Gulf of Alaska, so light winds there. Again, a little more wind out here to the west, and turbulence, that's where all the turbulence will be here. Mechanical here for Kodiak Island, the Aleutian Range, and over the Kilbrook Mountains. And also from the Alaska Peninsula out to the west, any moderate will be out there toward Kiska and Amchitka Island, maybe over to Adak. And after hangar flying, I'll be back with a look at the marine forecasts.
Good evening. I'm Harry Keeling on behalf of Alaska Public Media, the Alaskan Aviation Safety Foundation. Welcome to Hangar Flying. We've got Dr. Petra Illig back on our program. She shared with us some very interesting facts about sleep apnea and the emphasis that the FAA has on that. I hope you've been able to listen in on those programs. Tonight we're going to talk about something I think you'll find really fascinating, and that is some of Petra's thoughts on the Germanwings tragedy. Dr. Illig, welcome back.
Thank you very much.
Would you share with our audience some of the ideas? I know, let's start with the role of the AME, or not, in this whole thing.
Well, I think a lot of the current focus, and this is going to evolve with more observations, more details coming out over time, and it's going to change our thinking, I think, as we get more information. But the current concept is that, you know, maybe the AME should have a deeper role in determining a pilot's mental health. I always tell all my pilots, it doesn't matter because you got to be crazy to want to fly anyway. but that's really, I think, putting an undue burden on an individual who only has the opportunity to see a person for, 30 or 45 minutes every 6 months, 1 year, or every 2 years, or with private pilots every 5 years. In my experience, there are people who do come in that very rarely, but, raise the hair on the back of your head a little bit, and you think, oh, and what do you do about those cases? Sometimes those cases, they weed themselves out simply because of their legal history. Many people with mental issues have, long rap sheets. And so that's a graceful way for the AME to say, I can't issue, but let the FAA deal with you. But there's also other people where that isn't the case, where there's no overt acts yet to demonstrate their mental instability. And so I think in the world of aviation, it really takes all of us. It takes the people in the flight schools, it takes the people who are training, it takes the people who's doing the biennial flight, we don't call them BFRs anymore, but anyway, it takes the company that's hiring this individual, it takes, the community, the family, it takes the physicians who are caring for this person outside. And in addition to that, though, there are also cultural differences. I mean, could this have happened in the United States? In my opinion, less likely, first of all, because operationally we don't allow only one pilot in a Part 135, am I getting that right? 135 operation to be absent, that there's always somebody else. So I think, to put the focus on the AME and ratcheting up psychological exams and psychological profiles and requiring more mental health evaluation isn't really the answer, in my opinion, because it's just not possible.
It's just unrealistic.
It's unrealistic.
The term occurred to me, socialization, and what you've talked before about is, here's a guy with 600 hours of time, and there's a socialization process with the crews that he flies with or should have flown with, and all of the elements that a 1,500-hour pilot or a 3,000-hour pilot would probably be exposed to, that this fellow was probably not exposed to.
Possibly not too, because operationally, you know, pilot training is different in Germany than it is here. You can join Lufthansa without a pilot's license and be trained up and stay within that culture. It's a huge airline. Yeah, there's lots of people involved, but if you complex that with the operational situation where you can have one pilot in the cockpit, those are like Swiss cheese model issues lined up, right? And in our country, it's a little bit different. It's, you know, most people don't start out with a major airline. They have to put in their time. You know, with smaller airlines, regional airlines, they have a much larger milieu of people that they work with, and many of these people get weeded out.
Yep.
As, you know, they go up in ranks and larger aircraft and hire larger airlines to hire them.
And of course, after the Colgan air disaster, you know, the rules changed. I mean, you got to have 1,500 hours to be a co-pilot in this country now. Well, I don't know this, but it wouldn't surprise me if those European airlines have changed that one. It's okay to have one person in the cockpit rule.
That's an easy thing to change, and I think they would be crazy not to all of them change it, and whether or not it's that way in Asian airline industry as well, I don't know, but I suspect that's going to be, you know, operationally not possible.
Yeah.
But the other issues about, you know, mental health and stability, there really aren't any tests that can be applied. Yes, you can apply tests to determine whether or not a person has a lot of anxiety or a lot of depression, but that really isn't the kind of individual that would cause these kinds of accidents. You know, by any measure, about 12 to 15% of the general population suffers from depression or anxiety, and pilots are only a subset of that. Yeah. But these aren't people who, they may be people who go and commit suicide, but they don't commit murder. And so it's people with another component of mental health issues which are very difficult to measure, and that's the personality disorder, the sociopathic person. These are people who look and act perfectly normal. They don't hallucinate, they don't, you know, but they have built-in personality disorders that allows them in certain circumstances to do something like this.
Yeah. Well, Peter, we've run out of time. Here's what I would like to do. Maybe let's revisit this in 6 months or a year and see what
shakes out.
Yeah. Thank you for being on the program. It's always
my
a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed tonight's program. Till next time, fly safe.
Welcome back. Well, westerly winds 15 to 20 knots from the north coast, and on the central and south coast, northwest 20 tomorrow, northwest 15 over the southern inside waters. Northern areas here, northerlies at 20 knots, that beginning to diminish and become more southerly in the afternoon there for northern Lynn Canal. And then for Wednesday, south 15 in the afternoon there for Lynn Canal. Otherwise, light northwest winds here, 10 to 15 knots with 2 to 3 foot seas over the inside waters. Light southeasterlies here from the north coast, and still a little brisk on the south coast, northwest 20 knots with seas 5 to 6 feet. Prince William Sound tomorrow, southwest winds in the afternoon at 15 knots, otherwise light and variable. Southwest for Cook Inlet at 10 knots north of the Forelands, a little more southerly and maybe 15 knots there south of the Forelands. East winds up to 20 knots for Kamishak Bay, northeast 20 for Chillicothe Strait, and southeast at about 20 with 7 foot seas there along the east side of Kodiak, 15 from the southeast for the Barrens. Then those pick up a little with that next system that comes up toward the southwest Kodiak in the front, right through this area. So small craft advisories for east winds at 30 knots to the Barren Islands, in toward Kamishak Bay, northeast 25 through Chillicothe Strait, but just south of the front there, 15 out of the east there for Kodiak, and east winds 25 knots also for the western Gulf Coast. Out in Bristol Bay, small craft advisories tomorrow for east winds at 25 knots, but seas only at about 5 feet. Lighter winds here on the Bering Sea side of the peninsula, south 15 with 4 foot seas. southwest 15 here. And small craft advisories for these areas due to seas at 8 feet or more. And southwest of Kodiak Island, south 20, but seas there still 8 feet, so you have small craft advisories for that zone as well. And easterlies at 20 knots here on the Pacific side of the peninsula for Wednesday. Lighter winds from the east for Bristol Bay, northeast light there on the Bering Sea side of the peninsula. And for the Aleutians, tomorrow, some small craft advisories here south of the chain, otherwise southeast, south to southeast to 20 for the Fox Islands, northeast to 25 here, west of Adak, and that's where the small craft advisories will be there on out towards Shimia. And then those will lighten up considerably out here over the far western zone down to 15. Still northerlies at 15 to 20 knots here for the central Aleutians and in toward Unmak Island there. But northeast winds 15 to 20 knots for Unalaska Island. And for the Pribilofs tonight, east winds at 20 knots, 7-foot sea, or for tomorrow. Tonight there'll be a little more than that, again with the gusts of 40 at St. George. And east winds 25 knots, south of Nunivak Island, northeast 25, St. Lawrence Island in toward Bristol Bay, especially from St. Matthew Island west. Of course, lighter winds over toward the east. And for Wednesday, northeast 20 across St. Lawrence Island. Otherwise, pretty light northerly winds to northeast here along the southwest coast. Much lighter winds for the Pribilofs north at 10, northeast 15 for the northern Bering Sea. For the Arctic coast, light winds, westerlies 10 knots for the central coast, Beaufort Sea coastline west-northwest at only 10 knots. On the western Arctic coast here, northeast 15 knots all the way down to Point Hope, Wells to Cape Thompson. Look for north at 15. And then for Wednesday, no change out in these areas. East 15 on the western coast. Easterlies now, but only at 10 knots for the central and eastern coast of Demarcation Point. For tonight, again, fair over the interior. A little bit of snow shower activity up here over the north central Brooks Range to the north slope, and then rain spreading eastward, ending toward the back to the west, changing to showers. Fair over the panhandle, and then some shower chances increase on Tuesday there up over the eastern interior, then back off the next day. Let's look at Alaska weather. Thanks for joining us.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.